unprecedented approach to modern psychology. A former president of the National Association of Black Psychologists, Dr. Akbar teaches in the Department of Psychology at Florida State University in Tallahassee. He formerly served as associate professor at Norfolk State University and was chairman of the Morehouse College Psychology Department for 3 years. He also has served on the board of directors of many of our national organizations, such as the National Association of Black Psychologists, of which he was elected president in 1987-88. He's currently on the editorial board of the Journal of Black Studies and was on the board for 8 years of the Journal of Black Psychology. A graduate of the University of Michigan with both undergraduate and doctoral degrees in psychology, he has received many honors for his progressive and landmark contributions to his specialized studies in the psychology of the African American. Among these are the National Association of Black Psychologists Annual Member Award and his recognition by that organization as a distinguished black psychologist for his outstanding scholarship and his research in African psychology. He is listed in Who's Who in Black America, received the prestigious Community Service Award from the National Association of Black Social Work. He was the second recipient of the Dr. Martin Luther King Distinguished Scholar Award at Florida State University in 1987. During that year, he was the recipient of a McKnight Foundation Faculty Development Grant, which afforded him a year's sabbatical for additional research and writing. He has been on Tony Brown's Journal, Donahue, Geraldo, and The Winfrey Show. He has published several different things in magazines, and he has written more than 200 significant scholarly papers, spoken at more than 300 universities, conference, and community settings across this country. I had the opportunity to hear Dr. Akbar last year when he was in Savannah for another meeting. I promise you a most entertaining but a most provocative next hour and a half. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome to Armstrong State College Dr. Naim Akbar.
Let me begin by saying with the name of God, who is the most gracious and the most merciful. Understanding as African people that we stand on the shoulders of those who preceded us, we acknowledge their presence and are thankful to the Creator for having made it possible for us to have those precedents who laid the path and opened the way for us, and who even now continue to intervene on our behalf as we continue to work towards greater accomplishments as a people. To Dr. Burnett, Dr. Buck, to the College Union Board, to the faculty, administrators, students, community visitors, to this very, very distinguished and very, very well-filled auditorium. It is indeed an honor for me to be with you today and to greet some of you, salam alaikum, others of you, habaragani, some of you, hotep, and the rest of you, yo, what up? This is a distinct honor for me today. I'm certainly pleased to see such a large number of turnout by the interim with the notebook open and sprawl and pens ready. I assume that some of you are here by coercion, by the excitement and enthusiasm. I'm sure that some are here voluntarily, and I'm sure that some of you were dragged in with the threat of death if you didn't show up. But for whatever reason got you here, you're here now, and I thank you for your presence, and I hope that we're all able to gain something through the interaction over the next few minutes. I'm honored to be here at Armstrong State campus. I have made any number of visits to Savannah. As Vice President Buck said, I was here for the convention here over at the Hyatt about a year or so ago. Was privileged several years ago to serve as a visiting professor for a couple of weeks over at Savannah State, over at the sister school across town, the darker sister that is. And we certainly had a very, very delightful time and had a very beautiful opportunity to become acquainted with Savannah for the first time. And this morning, Mr. Owens did an excellent job of showing me an abbreviated historical tour, the Black historical tour of Savannah. know very much about the history of African people here in Savannah, you miss a very, very superb treat. And Mr. Owens being right here on campus as the Director of Minority Affairs is certainly an excellent person to make that information available to you. So I was really enthralled and excited by the things that I was able to see and learn this morning again about the tremendously colorful and powerful history of black people wherever we happen to be. The topic that I was asked to talk about is the one of racism in education. I am not particularly interested in beating the racism drum. It's a drum that has been beaten so severely that if anyone were going to hear it, they should have heard it by now. From all indications, it ain't going to get heard. We continue to produce the David Dukes of this world. We continue to produce the kind of political conservatism in this world. We continue to produce the kind of myopic and ignorant approach to reality that has its foundation in the distorted perception of human activity that is known as institutional structured racism, which characterizes the very groundwork of this nation. Now, given that, I believe that it is in fact a waste of a tremendous amount of energy to continue to invoke the demonic presence of this mentality as a means of trying to resolve it in its own essence. I believe then that we must begin to take a slightly different approach and to begin to understand something about what then becomes the alternative. If racism is an inescapable given of being in America, are we then doomed by its inevitability? Or are there processes and resources which we can appeal to somehow help us to transcend even the limiting and belittling aspects of what racism is really all about? So what I want to actually talk about is education as a tool of empowerment. And to begin to talk about how that tool has been used for the benefit of some people and has been systematically excluded as a tool for other people. And let's look at that from this point of view. Now, education has been assumed to be the key to power, the key to effectiveness, the key to true Americanism, the key up from slavery, the key to civil rights, the key to empowerment, the key to participation, the key to this. If education opened all those doors, then there would be no problem getting anywhere we wanted to go. Obviously, the key they gave us didn't work too well. So what we need to begin to understand is how to get the right key, or at least how to make the key we have open the doors we want to get in. So we want to submit to you that the mission of education in any society, for any people, at any time, is simply very clear. It is an instrument for empowerment. It is an instrument by which people are brought into the mechanisms for influencing the significant components of the society. Education is the instrument by which people can begin to influence the essential components of a society. So what education is supposed to do is to give people the capability of influencing, first of all, the material resources of a society. One, by virtue of their tools, and the tools which they master are able to somehow move things materially and make those materials serve the human need and human progress to the best of their ability. The process of education is supposed to give people the capability to make the material resources serve them best. So if you know certain things, and if your education is real, then you should be able to make things that you need for your material survival more accessible to you. You should be able to master in this society financial, economic resources. You should be able to master the use of certain tools that begins to restructure the environment. You should be equipped in some way to be able to alter the material world towards the objective of the advancement of yourself and people like you. So if the education is working, you should be substantially, materially better off with education than those who do not have education. Now, obviously, there is a tremendous discrepancy in terms of how this process works. Because even though we know that there are many, many people of all hues and descriptions who have a considerable amount of education, it therefore does not work as well for some as it does for others. What Leona Helmsley did with her education and what Mary McLeod Bethune did with hers was really quite different. What Donald Trump does with his education and what John Johnson does with his education is really quite different. So therefore, the question becomes, how is it and what is it about the educational process that gives one person an education that lets them control and manipulate and actually coerce the utilization of more resources than other people? But one of the things that education ought to do is to make you materially more adequate, materially more competent, materially more able. There is no dignity and no virtue in poverty. Education is not intended to impoverish you. It should, in fact, bring you out of poverty. And please understand that when we talk about poverty, we're not talking about housing projects and cups to beg with. We're talking about the ability to simply move and manipulate the material world towards the enhancement of your own life. Therefore, you should be able to facilitate your survival. You should have better health care. Your babies should live longer. Your children should live longer. You should be healthier. You should breathe better air. You should be able to drink better water, eat better food. That life should be enhanced by virtue of the educational process. Education should also serve to empower you to intellectually influence. One should have an increased ability to influence the world of ideas. Educated people don't simply regurgitate what they've heard. Educated people influence ideas. They come up with new ways of seeing things, new ways of thinking about things, new ways of conceptualizing things. And those ideas begin to give them the ability to help other people believe as they believe. And when other people believe as you believe, then you're able to bring about certain influences that again improves your adequacy and capability on the planet. Please stick with me. We're building an argument here. The idea is that education should in fact give you what you need to be able to have a place in the world that is viewed with dignity and respect by other human beings in the world. If you've got a good education, then you should in fact be able to not only impact the here and now, but the there and then. You should be able to ensure that your babies yet unborn will be able to be looked upon in a more dignified way by virtue of the ideas that you develop. So the sociologists who come up with sociological theory, or Freud as he does his psychological theory, or the economists who come up with economic theory, they are not simply trying to understand what is, they are trying to develop ways of influencing ideas so that their ideas can become the most prevalent ideas on the planet, so they can more effectively do what they're doing in influencing how to become more of what they want to become. So the bottom line is that what education ought to equip you to do is not to regurgitate what Sigmund Freud said, or what Shakespeare said, or what Homer said, or what was quoted by someone else. Education, if it is in fact teaching you what you need to know, should equip you to go and challenge Freud and say, boy, you weren't right about that. This is what they've done. I mean, like the Socratic dialogues in European history, and even farther back, as we get to in a minute, people have been engaged in a dialogue. Marx was confronting the capitalists. Capital, the Communist Manifesto were all documents of people developing ideas in order to influence the world, influence politics, and move their people ahead in certain systematic ways. And then the intellect, the education, should permit you to develop a way to influence the moral environment. That is, that the values that enhance your life as a person, as a people, as a nation, as a community, should be enhanced by your education. Your education should make you more of an instrument to influence the world, to somehow engage in the kind kind of value pursuits that are essential for your survival, your enhancement, and your development as a people. That's what education should do. Now, with that as a foundation, a postulate for our argument, let us suggest that what is masquerading as education for everyone in the United States of America and most of Western Europe and most of the world is in fact a system that is intended to develop European males of Caucasian appearance to have greater material power, greater intellectual power, and greater moral power. That in fact, what is in fact being called an education for everybody is in fact a very narrowly defined educational system that perpetuates the power of the people who have the power and ensures the limited access of the non-powerful to ever get that power. So the education actually makes those who have power more powerful, and makes those who have no power become the facilities by which the powerful continue to get power by using their powerlessness to make them more powerful. That's wrong. Now, what this means then, and it's a very old European tradition, that in fact the education was a thing for the aristocracy. It was the people who were intended to rule were educated. One of the precepts that America was supposed to develop was the precept of education for everybody. Education for all. What if Jefferson said something about you can't have a democracy unless you have an educated masses. So they wanted to educate the masses. What they didn't tell you is that they were giving you the key to the master's house rather than a key to your own house. It was not intended to put you where Jefferson was. It was simply to make you work better to keep Jefferson where he wanted to be. Now, let's be, don't get upset yet. Now, this means then that there is something about the educational system that has a uniquely tailored approach that makes it work well for some and poorly for others. George Bush's education got him to be the president. Even Van Quayle became vice president. David Duke running for president. Clearly bizarre personages in terms of their behavior as it regards other human beings, but clearly able to utilize their education in certain selected ways. Clarence Thomas, with his Princeton law degree, became the instrument by which George Bush could put all niggas in their place once and for all. We'll deal with that issue in a minute. Now, the point is that this whole strategy, of course I mean niggas in quotes, you know that, but that's another story. But the idea is that the objective of the whole process was intended to preserve a certain unitary conception of what the world ought to be, and to begin to make the world continue to work well for certain people while excluding others. Now, how do you do this? The way that this educational system works to give some people the use of keys that will empower them while excluding others is the kind of approach to education which occurs. What do you need? You need, number one, information. Education provides you with information. Now, we know that the world is rampant with information. As soon as you open your eyes, you already are perceiving so much information that your whole, the most sophisticated computer system in the world, which is your brain, can do nothing with most of the information. In other words, you scan reams of information and simply select out of that perception those things that fit into your conceptual program. And so therefore, what is in fact information is everything in this room. When you walked in here, you immediately saw probably one small fraction of the information that's in this room. The selectivity was based upon certain kinds of processes that had already been programmed into you. People you knew, faces you expected to see, certain people who you were expecting to see in this place, certain people you recognized, certain situations, You had a classroom in this particular room. It reminded you how many times you slept in this very same auditorium. You began to notice the discrepancy between the number of the whites and the number of blacks here. You begin to deal with the racial classifications. You begin to look for the nice-looking females as opposed to the hard-heads that were here. You see that there are more nice-looking females than there are unattractive ones. Those are the kinds of categories of how you put together the information. Not dealing with in this room. There is simply enough information right here to reconstruct an entire universe right here. But how much of that information do we use? A very small amount of it. So there's a selectivity of information, both in terms of what we perceive, but certainly in terms of what education does. What are we saying? We are saying then that what is claimed as education is first and foremost a very carefully scrutinized, strategic process of selection. People select out of the plethora of world events those things that are considered to be most relevant to the agenda at hand. It does not necessarily do what it's supposed to do, that is, give you a general way to perceive the world, certain analytical and cognitive capabilities to be able to alter your perceptual capabilities in terms of addressing certain problems, situations, to be able to approach those situations in a logical way so that you can come up with kind of a critical logic. None of that is true. What it gives you is a tool to accomplish certain specialized agendas. So information is selective. Now, there is not a person in here, unless you are under the age of 5 or seriously mentally deficient, who believes that actually Columbus discovered America. No logical person could accept that. Even the illustrators in the textbook can't even draw that line. They always draw it with the Nina, the Pina, the Santa Maria coming across the ocean, and there are people standing on the shore welcoming in. How do you discover a fully occupied piece of turf that you infiltrate, come in, depend upon them to survive, tell the whole story of how you survived, acknowledge there were people there when you got there, proceed over the next 200 years to kill most of it if you can, and still operate with the idea that Columbus discovered America. Assuming, of course, America was lost. Assuming, of course, no discovery today. But rather than simply stating the facts as they are, to say that Christopher Columbus represented, to the best of our knowledge, the first European to find his way to this part of the world, because prior to that time, the intellectual knowledge of the world had already concluded that the world was flat, it was not round, and therefore it was incapable to get to the east by going west, and Columbus defied that logic of his time and ended up being a renegade, a radical, a militant, and therefore did what was logically inconceivable within the confines of that time, and therefore he represented the first white man to find the world was round. Okay, why not tell the story that way? That would not achieve the objective. Because the objective of information is not to tell you what actually happened. The objective is to inspire you, which is another function of education, to use that information in certain select ways. So the agenda is to inspire Dan Quayle to feel a sense of ownership in America so that he can become vice president despite his inability to take a concrete syllogism and make it metaphorically applicable. Despite the fact that he is lurking in certain, I don't want to just pick on poor Dan Quayle, pick name one, they're all the same. The bottom line is that he has a same kind of problem in terms of what is in fact adequate leadership. But how do you make a boy from Indiana, whose family happens to be wealthy, feels that he can in fact run the United States of America while taking a $27,000 golf trip out of Washington on your money? You see, the idea of how you do that, how can you make congressmen somehow like write $900 worth of bad checks? They want to put me in jail by writing one that I'm running to the bank and trying to check. How do you do that? How do you create that? How do you create the arrogance, the mendacity, the gall to be able to make those strategic decisions about other people's lives while systematically defying every ethical code that you pin yourself? How do you create that kind of mendacious audacity? Simply by giving these certain kinds of information. Making Columbus. Now, how do you teach young white males to keep their position of leadership in the Western world? How do you teach them that it's all right to go and bomb Kuwait, but that South Africa get away doing what it wants to do decade after decade after decade after decade after decade? What is it that legitimizes a mentality that lets it be all right to go and bomb Gaddafi's daughter, but not raise any question about the kinds of minds and mentalities that have oppressed African people throughout the African continent and throughout most of this world, including in Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, throughout most of the history of this country? How do you, in fact, give people the inspiration to feel it is their moral right to go and save other people's worlds while not saving their own hypocritical, contradictory, morally obtrusive worlds? You see, the way you do that, listen, the thing that inspires that is by giving you a diet of Columbus, a diet of Napoleon, a diet of King Edward VIII, a diet of all of these people who represent a selection from history that makes you feel that you are in your right as a white male to run and rule the world. That's the nature of the information. So look, no one denies what the Greeks did in terms of classical knowledge and developing certain skills of philosophy and science and mathematics. It is absolutely interesting, amazing, and it is actually, in fact, an enlightenment. There is no evidence for any light being in Europe before the Greeks began to do what they did. That's clearly admirable. Certainly, Western knowledge sits on the foundation of Greek knowledge. What the Greeks brought to Europe had never been there before, and what the Greeks developed, the rest of the Western world still sits on. Now, who would dare begrudge them that? No one denied Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Socratic ideas, Herodotus, Hippocrates. No one can deny that instrumentation, which in fact facilitated Europe out of its first dark ages and brought it into modern civilized life. No one denies that. The question is that the genesis of knowledge? That's the question we must ask. And I submit to you that the nature of the information selection is in fact intended to select out the way it does. So what happens in terms of the story of history, the story of philosophy, the story of math, the story of science? We start the story in the middle, well, really towards the end of the story, towards the end of the serial. No one bothers to announce that the knowledge that the Greeks built that introduction to life for Europe on was black knowledge that came off the African continent. You see, the fact that the discontinuity gets introduced, and all of us, I mean, there are philosophers in this room. I'm sure there are psychologists, sociologists, there are economists. They're all people who consider themselves experts in thought. And the majority of us assume without question that the world's knowledge had its foundation of significance with the beginning of the Greeks. There's not a textbook that you read. I don't care whether it's biology, I don't care whether it's philosophy, I don't care whether it's theater. The first play was Medea. The Iliad and the Odyssey, the Homeric poems which laid the foundation for modern literature. I mean, it's all there in every field of study. You name the field, they have to start page 1 in Greece. And no one denies that. What we are suggesting to you today is that that's the selective process. Because the agenda is to perpetuate the idea that you must be from Europe, you must be white, and you must in fact be male if you're going to be qualified for world leadership. Now that's the nature of the agenda of empowerment. And please, let's be clear. We do not suggest for a moment that that is incorrect. The incorrection, I think, is the distortion. And the fact is the denial of other contributions, but it is a correct procedure. That if you want to give people power, you've got to give them information. You've got to motivate them. You've got to make them feel it is their right and responsibility to move ahead, forge new territory, go cut down the rainforest, go into outer space, go forge the streams, go dam the oceans, and go build up everything, go pave the world if you want some pavement to park your cars in. The way you do that who represent that spirit. And in the process of doing so, you are able to incite, to inspire, to direct, and give them what they need to stay in leadership. Now, we have suggested that Armstrong State College, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Michigan, Florida State, Albany State, Savannah State, Morehouse, Spelman, Hampton, Tennessee State, and all the other schools in this country come out of the same fundamental basis, which assumes that the world's knowledge is rooted in Euro-American reality. Now that's the question, that's the crux of the matter. That's the crux of the fact that we have higher education, probably than most other social groups in this country. Most other immigrant groups, most other national groups, proportionally. We have more degrees than most other national groups in this country. But we have less power. We have less economic control. We have less influence. We're probably the only communities in the world where we operate, we live in the majority and put other people to lead us. I understand Savannah has a majority black population. Have you ever had a black mayor at all? No. And probably won't as long as you are miseducated. Most of the country has been the same way until very recently. Some folks begin to wake up and the cities begin to die. Some say, oh, we get a black one, now ain't nothing to run. But the idea is that we somehow continuously and consistently go choose somebody else to rule us. Our children go to the school, no child in the school but us. You get a principal who looks nothing like the child. You go somewhere and you send your child to a school and somehow nobody in the school and nothing in the curriculum ever tells the child about his black self, her black self. And in the process of doing so, we raise children who have PhDs in ignorance. We have people, listen, we have professors and lawyers and doctors and professionals who are extremely well trained, miseducated, but they can't use their tools to help their own people. Here they are, brilliant linguists, and can't teach black children how to write and read. Here they are, brilliant mathematicians, and they swear that black children can't learn math. What are they? They black. That somehow we have brilliant philosophers and theologians who can master all of the European philosophy but know nothing about African philosophy. In fact, would argue that there is no philosophy in Africa. So these are the kinds of people who are ill-equipped. Again, look at our boy Clarence. Brilliant, trained lawyer. Outstanding. Talked about his mama, talked about his sister, got rid of his black wife, and then went on national TV and says, I'm here on my own accord. Somebody let me in, but it really doesn't matter. I'm here because I'm all right by myself. So he doesn't have youth enough to understand what Adam Clayton Powell understood, what Thurgood Marshall understood, that if you are there, you are not there representing yourself. You are there as an instrument set there by people like yourself. So I don't care why you think you're there for. You are there to serve George Bush's purpose. If he did not want you to represent his supposedly enlightened philosophy, you wouldn't stay there. I don't care how skilled you are, how brilliant you are. And if you are stupid enough then to let your presence there be used as an instrument to set black people farther back, then you are in fact miseducated, trained, and you're no worse, no better than a seal whirling balls on your nose while you can't even go fish for yourself out the Arctic Ocean. Now the bottom line is that this is the consequence of an education that doesn't empower. Why is it that African Americans make all, like we populate all the malls as buyers? Go to the mall, you don't see nobody but black folks. White folks know it's a recession. They define it as such. It's been a depression for us all the time. The only folks there are black folks. But no black folks in the managerial position. No black folks directing the malls. No black people controlling the idea. No black people controlling the franchise. No black people controlling the bank. But there we are, buying whatever they got. I want to need some new Guess jeans, honey. I got to give me a starter jacket for my baby. He want him for them Nike Pump 'em Up Air Jordan. I got to give me some of these, what is it called, Gabbo jeans or Gabardot jeans or whatever. I got to go get me a CD because it's hammer time, baby. Somehow we are committed to spending all we get. So a penny saves in our community is about a half hour. Every other community revolves the money back minds in this country, bar none. White, green, purple, you are some of the most intelligent people on this planet. I'll tell you why in a few minutes. But in spite of that, most of you can't aspire to do anything but get a job. You are here, I'm going to get me a good job when I get out of here. I can't wait to go get me a good job. Well, for what? You had a good job when they brought you down here on the riverbank almost 100 years ago. What you should be concerned about now is how can I make some jobs? How can I create some institutions? How can I make sure that my children won't have to go look for jobs, but my children will be in a position to define jobs and define work and to put people to work rather than go looking for work? But you see, you think the best thing for you to do, I got me a job at the Georgia Trust Company in Atlanta. I'm going to move to Atlanta. I'm going to get me a condominium out there in DeKalb County. And I'm going to get me a Beamer, a BMW, white on white, in white, with pearl wheels. And I'm going to get a boom box in the back of the car. So when I ride down the road, everybody will say, there comes a middle-class Negro who got a job. So here you are, sitting next to people who will in fact run Georgia in the next century. Sitting in a classroom with people who are questionably your equals very often, who will in fact become your boss in their uncle's corporation, who will become the banker who controls the loan department while you are a teller passing their money back and forth. And you are sitting in classes next to them, doing as well or better than many of them, and you don't even aspire to run the damn thing. You simply want to be present there. Not wanting to define the direction of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, but just want to be accepted. Just want to be a part. I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. I'm a jackass or an elephant. Jewish people, European Americans, even intelligent Hispanics, want to influence whoever is in office. They're much more concerned about a lobby that will make the Democrats or the Republicans treat their people right no matter who's in office. They are concerned about the fact that when Russian Jews decide to come to America, they don't expect the United States Congress to not take a position to say that you have a right to come to this country. But black folks are so busy wanting to be a participant, they bring black folks from Haiti and send them back to die in the ocean, and nobody raises a question about it. Don't you understand that? So I'm saying that we don't aspire for leadership because our education has not equipped us to do so. Brothers, you watch the NBA playoffs, you watch the NCAA playoffs, you watch the football, the Super Bowl. 90% of the people on the field are bloods. The ones who slam, duck, twirl in the middle of the air while moving through air, like flying through space and hit the backboard from all the way to the other end of the court. Brothers almost every time. Larry Bird is something like called a brother in disguise or something. But the majority of them are brothers. College sports will be toned down tomorrow if brothers run on that court, on that field. You know I'm telling the truth. Don't nobody go watch golf. I'm serious. They go watch football, baseball, basketball, and those are bloods out there. Now, ideally, one would assume that all those bloods out there on the courts and on the field, some of them would be concerned about becoming agents to begin to make sure that the Bloods don't get a salary, they begin to own a part of the stock that owns them. It would assume that some of them would begin to raise the question, do I want to play basketball all of my life and wear out my knees, or do I want to own a team and make some of the millions and billions rather than the 15-cent salary they give me out of this whole thing? Do I want to sell Coca-Cola, or do I want to own a drink that's better than Coca-Cola? The question is, how do you aspire? What do you aspire for? So here's a little boy, a little nerdy-looking boy who can't play ball, can't even dribble right, don't know the double dribble from a walk, and can't slam dunk, can't even slam dunk well when he goes to the bathroom. But the bottom line is that his aspiration is to become a lawyer that controls every penny that Michael Jordan made. His aspiration is to become someone in communication who controls the network. Ted Turner can't play basketball, but every time somebody plays the ball, Ted Turner gets rich. Now, why don't we aspire for those positions of leadership? I'm talking can begin to collect information that advances us as a people. Now, how do we do this? We submit to you, we almost finished, we submit to you that black education must have, if it is going to ever work, not simply an opportunity to imitate European American education. Now, I want you to hear me well now. Please hear me well. Because you see, we are so trained in our thinking. Remember that selection of this information I talked about? Most of you are so well trained, black and white alike, that what you've heard me say so far is a rampantly rabid attack on white people. That was the most militant, radical man I ever heard. He talked about racism. He's a reverse racist. Did you hear him? You lied. I am simply defining a reality that is empirically demonstrable. I'm not saying I dislike white people. In fact, I'd encourage you to continue to do what you're doing for you. My concern is that it ain't going to work for us. My concern is not to destroy white people. My concern is to save black people. And I further believe that if African Americans are saved in this country, we can prove that we can save the whole world. Because I believe that we have a position that everybody can learn from. We have sat through the worst and the best of America. And if we can come into a recognition of our human capability, that the whole world can find solutions in their problems in us. If we can solve our family problems, we can help you deal with your divorce rate. If we can begin to raise our children as we raised them on the plantation to save them from a system that was supposed to destroy them, we can teach you how to raise your children. Dr. Spock doesn't know. Look how neurotic his children turned out. George Brothers sure doesn't know. And you better listen to Dr. Ruth, you will have a real Jeffrey Dahmer in your house. There is no real evidence of that. How do you keep your intelligence? How do you keep your dignity when everything around you has worked to dehumanize you? What is it that made us? Now I'm going to brag a little bit. We are not ordinary people. Not because we are better than anyone, not because our skin color makes us better, but we represent a breed of human beings who have demonstrated the undeniable, inextricably clear picture that the human being is filled with the resilience of power and dignity that no other being on this earth has. We came off of a plantation. 300 years of utter human barbaric treatment. Castration, regularly. Lynchings for Sunday sport. Shall we shoot rabbits this week or niggers? That's what the Georgia people used to say, old folk and his boys. That's what they said in South Carolina. That's what they said in Florida. That's what they said in Illinois and Michigan. The idea was that we were not considered human. That's why the Constitution didn't include us. We were systematically raped. Black women became vessels for white perversity throughout their history. You see the colors we are? You see why most of us don't look very African today? It's not because of marriage ceremonies, you better believe it. Most of us look this way as a consequence of systematic rape of black women by white men. Don't get mad at me. It is historically, demonstrably, and genetically provable. Look around you, fool, and you can see. Don't get mad at me about that. Oh, he came and said all that old stuff. It's the truth. And if it hurts, will be pained, my friend. Black women raped. Black men used as studs. Went out as roosters and horses and dogs. Sent from plantation to plantation to be a stud. And what is disturbing is that many brothers think it is still a badge of courage and honor to still be a stud. You're crazy, brother. You are insane. That many women still think it's an honor of pride to be desired and wanted as a prostitute, as a slut, under the body of someone who has historically treated you like an animal. You see, this is the sickness that we inherited from the plantation. But despite that, what we need to note, though, is the manifestation of our human dignity. What do you mean by that, Akbar? I mean that we walked off the plantation saying, just get out of my way, we want to make the best of what we've got. upon the way they treated us. We weren't looking for vengeance, we were looking for opportunity. And even in 1992, who runs and controls the hate groups in this country? White people. There are 286 hate groups in this country whose primary agenda is to do nothing but hurt people because you don't like how they look or what they believe. That's the agenda. 286 of them, most of them in Florida, my whole state. The skinheads, the Klan, all these people. People got upset as if David Duke came from outer space. Oh, David Duke, he's like your daddy. He's like your uncle. He's like your brother. He's like many of you. And your disguises don't in fact deny what the agenda is still for the majority of people in this country. But the point is that that is not the issue. The issue is here are people who have no evidence of black aggression. There's never been a war of black people against white people. There have been many wars of white people against black people. There's never been one white man lynched by black people in the history of this country. Not one. There's not been one history of a white man receiving capital punishment for raping a black woman. Never in the history of the country. Obviously, rape went on, but no one has ever been convicted for it. Now, how then do we account for that? The bottom line is that it can't be accounted for given the theories that we have. The theories that we have suggest to us that coming out of certain kinds of poverty backgrounds and being unnecessarily the consequences of dysfunctional families with female-headed households and the inability to be able to have the kind of proper role models within the home setting that begins to create the kind of super-ego capabilities and propensity to be able to analyze reality in a realistic kind of way, then begins to create certain kinds of introjected images that require people to act in aggressive kinds of ways and therefore begin to produce people like Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay? Now, the idea is that if that is the theory for human dysfunction, we ought to be the craziest people in this country. If, in fact, stress is enough to make you go off the left end, the right end, or one of them ends, if stress is enough, why don't we have people who lose their job and go down to the job and shoot everybody there? Why don't we have people who go down to Killeen, Texas and say, I'm depressed, bam, 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 and shoot everybody? Why don't we have John Wayne Gacy's, Jeffrey Dahmer? Why don't we produce those kinds of people? I want to suggest to you that even in spite of all that has happened to us, in spite of the black-on-black crime, in spite of the drugs, in spite of the hurt that we experience, despite the self-destructiveness that characterizes many things we do, the bottom line is that we are still exemplary human beings. We still operate with a value system that America should look at and study. We still try to deal with problems by saying, let's try to talk it out. We still try to confront a historically racist and destructive group of people by saying, look, I mean you no harm. I simply want to be an opportunity for my babies to do what your babies can do. I don't want to take yours. I just want to have the right to have mine. I don't want to take your 5 houses. Damn it, just let me get one. You understand? There is no history of black people being organized to hurt white people. But they fear us. As if we are the Klan. As if we are the skinheads. As if we are the people whose entire lives have been devoted to human hatred, human destructiveness for entertainment purposes. Now, I submit to you that there is something to be learned here. How did we survive this mess? What is Dr. Naim Akbar doing standing here? A little old black boy out of Tallahassee, Florida, whose grandmama was a maid, who somehow was never intended to be an American, who never was intended to be literate, who 100 years ago would have been convicted for doing something illegal by reading or even writing the books that he now writes. What is it that made us who we? What made us Ben Carson? What is it that made America Cloud Bethune? What is it that inspired a Barbara Jordan? What is it that made us do in spite of everything? What is the source of this energy that has been infused in us that made us stand up in human dignity when we had no right to do so? We submit to you the world has a lot to learn from us. And if you will simply stop and come out of your arrogance for a minute, there's a tremendous lesson to be learned. Very quickly, how do you do it? Number one, relevant information. Black folks need to know who they are. Simple as that. Plato, not to exclude the European experience of that, but just tell the whole story. Let's understand what Plato and Socrates in fact emulated were the theories and ideas that had already been established by black philosophers in the Nile Valley for thousands of years, long before Plato and Aristotle ever got there. But they set this philosophy, they set the concept and understood the concept of the unmoved movement, the world of forms, the world of ideals, understood the concept of ideals, mentation, and cognition brought together in certain different ways to effect the physiological development. And Hippocrates was in fact a physician, he was a great physician, that he learned from the teachings of Imhotep, a black bald man, who taught him how to use holistic medicine, the ethics of healing, long before there was an Hippocrates. And Herodotus actually recorded the historical documents that he found that were written by African people in the Nile Valley. Where is the Nile Valley? The Nile Valley is in Africa. Who lives in Africa? Africans. What color Africans? Black, thick nose, thick lips. We do not deny that there was a Greek pantheon, but we submit to you that the Greek pantheon was a replica of Luxor and Karnak. The temples that were there, that were built of the same form. The Ionic and the Corinthian columns were simply replications of the lotus and the papyrus temples that were built in the Nile Valley. We do not deny that there was a concept of monotheism that was developed by the Europeans, that was developed by the people who called themselves the Hebrews. We also let you understand that Akhenaten understood the oneness of God thousands of years before Moses ever knew there was a oneness of God. Long before there was a 10 commandments, there was a 42 negative confessions written by the hands of black people on the tombs of their black dead for thousands of years before anyone understood the need for ethics in order to be able to influence human events and human affairs. Long before there was a women's live movement, Queen Hatshepsut, a black woman, ruled the world all by herself. And somehow she was able to somehow bring to the world an understanding of concepts of human rule and human capability by remaining a woman while still being able to operate within the leadership arena and being able to do it in partnership with the man. We need to understand that the Dogon people understood the moving of the heavenly bodies, were able to read the Sirian star system long before Copernicus ever got a telescope to begin to understand anything that was going out there. The Dogon had already understood the seasons, the movements of seasons, the concept of time, the regularity of the heavenly bodies. They were able to build their houses and build their cosmology around the movement of the heavens. They were able to dance and sing and to drum in replication of the kinds of rhythms of the universe itself. These were things that were understood long before these things were even conceptualized in Europe. That's all we are saying. And that does not mean that anybody is better. It just means that some folks were early and others were later. That's all. It means that we all share a human lineage. And if you as a European American if you do not respect the fact that this black man has in his blood and veins and in his genetic material the same genetic material that led to the building of the Great Pyramid of Giza. If you don't understand that this black woman who sits here before you gave birth to the same genetic material that served as the builders of the obelisk which was stolen from all over Africa and came to be replicated downtown Washington, D.C. as the Washington Monument, which is a replica of the mythological and pragmatic building skills and capabilities of the African people. If you do not appreciate the fact that the concept of government, the concept of the unification of government, the concept of a mental, spiritual, and physical integration of human knowledge was brought together by black, kick-your-head, big-nose, thick-lipped people long before the world. If you don't know that, then you are missing your ability to be able to learn from me as I learned from you. Now, we are not suggesting that I can't learn from you, because I forgot a lot. They erased a lot of it. That's why we create people like Michael Jackson today. Walks around trying to get white, trying to get his lips thin, trying to get his nose de-nosed, and trying to get that hair anything to do with the hair. He is cooking, barbecued, activated, deactivated, turned up, turned it. So much so that he was under all these lights I'm under right now, he burst into flames. You see, we are producing people like LaToya, like Bison and LaToya, who spend all their time trying not to look black, who feel that a giraffe is a better companion than a black person, who somehow are convinced that they are not worth anything despite the tremendous skills and creativity that they bring. We are suggesting to you that our power as a people is handicapped. We can't be influenced because we don't know who we are. The calendars in this world were started by black folks. Mathematics laid out, conceptualized, and is demonstrated the presence today of the pyramid with less than a millimeter of error in its entire 400-foot structure, reaching over 4 blocks and put together with tons of stones weighing 2 tons each, reaching all the way to the has not been able to understand. The brothers put it together. And therefore, that should be understood from the back of the dollar bill as if it was something George Washington put together. George didn't do it. George understood the mystical knowledge that led to putting it together, and he understood some of it, and therefore he put it back there as a symbol for the power of the African manifested. Now, we are simply saying that if young black boys and black girls understood that, they wouldn't walk around thinking that because they can hip-hop, they could. They would not believe that it was fun to blow another brother's brains out. They will not find fun in smoking crack cocaine that is being brought there for the express purpose of taking them off the planet. They will not understand that the AIDS virus interacts with the black melanin in such a way that makes us 10 times more likely to die from the disease than other groups do. We are saying where it came from. We know for a fact that it acts on us to a degree that it doesn't act on other people with an intensity and a voraciousness that is wiping out our population game straight in every other kind of way before we can understand what's happening. And not one black medical facility is engaged in trying to understand where it's coming from. We need to understand what it does to our children psychologically to bring them up, taking them to the mall every November 27th and say, go sit on Santa's knee. And who is Santa? A fat white man with a white beard, with a red suit, who your little black baby is looking to do for him what mama and daddy and grandmama and auntie and uncle can't do. Beginning to give opportunity, beginning to develop respect for someone who has no interest in him, who would even come in his neighborhood after dark to be a good friend. And somebody believes that he can do what daddy can't do. And then to add insult to injury, most of you go up and leave. I told you right now. Close your eyes real quick and picture God. Voila, there he is. Raphael's drawing. Michelangelo's drawing. Blonde hair, blue eyes, pale skin. That's your concept of God. I said, let's look at his mama. There she is, the white lady. You understand what this does? It does two things. It makes white people crazy because they start thinking they are God, and it makes black people crazier because they think they can't get to see God. And so I feel that these Jews, the innocent, you think I'm crazy. All you people out there, oh, he's such a reverse racist. Why did they bring him here anyway? I'm a white and fake education. Listen. If I were out, how many of you who are not black would take your child systematically from the day it was born to be christened in front of the picture of a black man with dreadlocks, with thick lips and a big nose, and say, I am the Son of God who has come to save you? How many of you would bring your child and show them the picture of the black Virgin Mary and light candles in front of her, do novenas to her, and say, Hail Mary, and let your child grow up with the image in his or her mind, believing that God and his father and his son is black? If you say you would, you lie. You know you wouldn't even take your child to see a black Santa Claus. No, baby, that's not the right one. And black people, African Americans, because we are so insane. Our children sometimes have better things than we do. We take the child to the mall, little 2-year-old, say, go on, son, sit on Santa's knee. The baby say, no, baby, I want to take your picture. The baby has sense enough to know something wrong with it. That does not look like anybody I know who I want to know. But the child, in its resistance, then gets your indignation. Oh, you such a spoiled child. Why do you act like that? I would like to see how many white mothers would push their little blonde-haired, blue-eyed, little pale baby on my black knee with my black bald head, with my thick nose. Well, I guess I look all right. There's some brothers who would get it out. But they would do it. And if you see when it's Santa Claus, they say, well, out of my children. I mean, if they see that, what is that? All that stuff and fat obesity, over-fat rubber. That thing may eat me up. Correct perfection. Correct. We are saying that because we don't have the relevant information, we do the same thing. Finishing up, I'll be right on. Once we have the relevant information, then we need to develop a kind of directed motivation. We need to get excited about those being who we are. Yes, I am a scholar. I did not get a mail order affirmative action degree. My credentials are impeccable. They were given to me by some of the most distinguished and respected European-American so-called scholars on this planet. I learned how to regurgitate, annotate, bibliographically reference every kind of document the European-Americans had put together to understand the psychological function, how to manipulate independent, dependent verbs, to be able to come out with 4 or 5 levels of confidence based upon my statistical manipulation. I was able to do all that stuff, so you are not looking at a fool here. But let me let you understand very clearly that the reason that I can sound like a Baptist minister is because there's something moving in me that is bigger than the PhD of the University of Michigan. college campus right here in Armstrong to understand their responsibility to stop hanging out on the steps and get their behinds in the library and begin to develop ideas that will change this world, who will leave here on Saturday afternoons and rather than going somewhere to get high, will go down to the high schools in Savannah and get to those young brothers and sisters and say, we're going to serve in spirit and mentor. I'm talking about the kind of motivation that will take the alphas and the kappas and the Qs and the sigmas and the AKs and the deltas and the zetas and the sigma gamma rho and say, no longer will we have another party until black men and women can stand up with the dignity of other people in the country. Now, red and white will mean nothing unless that red and white can change the lives of African American people. I don't give a damn how you look in your pink and green, and I don't care whether you want to be a dog with a leash around your neck or not. Your responsibility is to save our people if you are a man and if you are a woman. If you are a dog or if you are a mouse, if you are a slut, or if you are somebody else who has no concept of what you are, then go do what you want to do, but don't claim ownership. Go read what your founding fathers and mothers wrote down in your documents. Greek letter organizations. Go find out that they were not preparing you to have the biggest cabaret in town. Go find out there's no place in your charter that taught you how to do a good step show and beat Savannah Step or Savannah State chapter and doing their step show. That's not the measure of manhood and womanhood. That's the misguided understanding of not knowing who you are. So since you can't find manhood up here, you start looking for it down here below your belt line or any place else you can find it. The idea is that manhood is determined by leadership and capability. Womanhood is determined by leadership, competence, capability. The ability to operate as a community, moving that community ahead and forward. That's what it means to be enfranchised and empower people. When your education begins to inspire you with ideas so we can begin to take the creativity of our young children who can listen to the hammer, sing one song one time and be able to come back and replicate not only every word he said but every step he did and never lose one piece of it. If that child can learn what Hammer did, if he can learn what Big Daddy King says, if she can listen to what Sister Latifah is able to do, Queen Latifah, Sister Queen Latifah, if they can listen to those things, if they can do that and do it instantly, how can you say these children can't learn? How can you say they can't understand mathematics? What is mathematics? Mathematics is the ability to be able to take quantification concepts and be able to convert them into usable and applied methods. When a child listens to music, the child is listening to mathematics put into form. And that child is able to decipher out the music, to count the music, and bring that count into its own brain, translate it into the body, and have the body going in synchrony with the music without even losing itself, and able to make everything on his body move at the same time and never lose a beat. That's how you mathematics. If you can do that, how can you not learn calculus? The only reason is that you're motivated to do the hip-hop, but you're not motivated to practice the calculus. Understand that knowledge does not belong to European Americans. Knowledge belongs to humankind. Knowledge is ours to claim from wherever we got it from. We must understand that a part of the responsibility, what slavery was intended to do, was to destroy our claim on the world's knowledge. Slavery was intended to destroy our claim for responsibility for the world's knowledge. Slavery was intended to destruct and to introduce the obstacle between our own origins and our own capabilities. Slavery was a device that was intended to destroy our humanity so we would become a permanent labor class. The only way we can begin to free ourselves is beginning to develop the kind of ownership of knowledge that begins to empower us again and to take that knowledge and apply it to ourselves. Last but not least, we need to see people of excellence who look like us. You, particularly the Armstrong State, you all got to go find you some black professors. I don't care how many they got, they're not enough. Why? It's not because they teach any better, some of them teach worse. But they look like you. In a society, look, I didn't make this racist society. I didn't say that there was black incompetence and white competence. This is the history of America. I didn't say white people were cursed by God to be the servants of black people. I didn't go get my scientists to go study genes and come up with some bizarre theory suggesting that black people had big genitals and little brains. I didn't go somewhere and begin to teach, come with my professors from my major universities like Shockley and Jensen and the rest of them, who began to teach the idea that black people were intellectually inferior because they couldn't pass tests that white people made to pass for themselves. Utilizing knowledge that they've been exposed to and systematically using that knowledge as a criterion for all human knowledge by imposing their concepts of reality on everybody else. I didn't make up that. I didn't come up with these racist concepts that make black and white different. We are the ones who pioneered the concept that human beings are human. I didn't invent the idea that when you see black and white together in this country, you are seeing some anomaly that defies the history and tradition of this country. I didn't do that. I didn't go around trying to kill black people because they were black. I didn't go around killing white people because they were white. If there's a race problem in this country, baby, we inherited it. And because it's here, we've got to deal with it. This old Pollyanna, well, we are all just people. People are people, Akbar. You can't be putting off, you're a fool. If you don't believe you're a fool, go walk in some of these white neighborhoods in Savannah after dark with your black self and tell them people are people. Find out that do like Rodney King did in Los Angeles, California. Just go walk, brother. Go walk, sister. Go take your big pocketbook down there at the Godshaw's department store and walk in there with your big pocketbook, sister, with your high-heeled shoes and your outfit on, and let you watch the store detective water follow you around because you are a black woman. Brother, you think you're so sharp. Go get your little white girlfriend that you got through jungle fever. Begin to walk downtown off this campus in Savannah and find out how many good native Savannaites like what they see. Find out how many people come out of these high, raised up trucks and ride by you, zoom by you, and have them shotguns in the back window. Come, you better take that white girl back to campus and go away. The idea is that these are not concepts to be developed. These are consequences of a sick nation. If there's a disease, you've got to immunize yourself against it. And the immunization is to begin to develop the kinds of ideas and let us understand our possibilities for excellence, our potential for success, how to utilize the knowledge we get, how to take the skills that we use to begin to convert those skills into powers of instruments, to be able to change the society, change the material resources, change the moral climate, change the value system, to be able to transform the environment, to make an environment that works off like it works for everybody else, then ultimately to use our example of how to be human beings that guided by spiritual notions, to understand how the concept of God, which has guided us and sustained us and permitted us to transcend circumstances we weren't supposed to, about how we were able to transform even destructive religious systems to make those religious systems work on our behalf, how we were able to somehow come with nothing to begin in a matter of a few days, come to the level of transcendence and capabilities that we have today, and how to use that human example to give the whole world a new leadership model for what the human being can do, guided by God and understanding the depth of the human intelligence. Thank you so much. Peace to you. Okay, some of you will hear the coercion. You may want to trip out very quickly. And some of the rest, I will take about 10 minutes of questions that I was asked to take some questions from you. I'd be glad to do so.